trials and troubles, I will be still surviving. Through my pain and times of sorrow, I will be still surviving. Be it family, stress with enemies, or addiction, I will be still surviving. With God on my side, forever will I remain still surviving.
Welcome to Still Surviving. I'm your host, Gigi Blackshear. For most of us, our experience with mental illness is maybe seeing the person walking down the street is talking to himself, or seeing the homeless people on the side of the road and imagining that there was some mental health issue that caused them to be there. However, because we all have minds, mental health issues is something that all of us may have to deal with in some form or another. So today our guest is going to talk to us about mental health in our natural environments, but also talk to us about when the health care provider needs health care.
In the midst of helping everyone else, I failed to help myself.
Because their reaction is never as bad as we make it out to be in our mind.
And I know that it is not for us to carry.
I typically tell them the only thing you've got to change is everything.
Let people know that there is a life after.
A better you, a stronger you, you're going to see a fighter when you come out of the other side.
A overcomer, a survivor, and a victor.
To me, to myself, I am a conqueror.
Still surviving.
So please welcome to our show, Pamela Raspberry. Pamela, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ms. Gigi. I appreciate you having me here today.
So please tell our audience, who is Pamela Raspberry and what is your survival story?
So I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter, sister, and friend, and I'm also a mental health therapist. Been doing that about 16 years now. And about 2012 or so, I was taking care of my father. It was about the last 3 months of his life, and he died earlier that year, about May 1st. And later on that year, I became pregnant. I was so excited. I was 43 at that time, and I had a 4-year-old. So I was already kind of beating the odds, and I was excited about that. And about 10 weeks into my pregnancy, I lost that baby. It was very traumatic for me because on top of losing my dad that year, it just felt just like, I guess, the end of the world. Just too much. And it was on Halloween when I lost the baby, and it was just very difficult to be happy. It was also my mother-in-law's birthday, and just, trick-or-treating, it's supposed to be fun, but just very devastating for me. I knew in my spirit that would be the last time that I would be pregnant, for whatever reason, and I just was feeling defeated. So at that time, my daughter, who I said was 4 at that time, came to me and said, Mommy, what's wrong? What's wrong? Where's the baby? And I explained to her in my way that God wanted that baby back, maybe to do something different. And so she went out of the room, came back and said, well, I asked God and you're going to have another one, so don't worry. So I was like, okay. Time passed on. My family and I hosted a couple of exchange students, just trying to get back into the swing of things. I work with children all the time, so just thinking that maybe this is my call to do this separately than, maybe in
additional children of your own.
Absolutely. But in that, I still felt like there was something else that needed to be done. So prayer, asked God, and he said, you must adopt. And so we did. My daughter that I adopted, we adopted her in 2017, 9-year-old at that time. So I have 2 daughters, same age, 10 days apart, and just excited about that. And I knew that it was my calling because our adoption, our finalization was on Halloween of 2017. So I knew that God was like, no, this is what you're supposed to do. So in that excitement, in my field, my industry, I kind of knew what I'm doing. But yeah, time proved that it really was something that I was taking on, not as a mental health professional, but as a mom, as just me. So it became difficult. And I never spoke about it. I didn't participate in support groups or anything because I felt like, oh, I know this. I know what I would say. Absolutely. Yeah. I know what I would say to a mother's position. I said that to myself, but things still weren't well for me. I was struggling.
Let me ask you a question, because you cover a number of issues.
Yes.
From the role of a caregiver, to losing your parent, your father, to then losing your child, and having a child at home to care for, and then adopting a child. So all of that, those are very emotional and traumatic experiences.
Absolutely.
Any one of them by themselves would be enough to cause some trauma. But then to have all of those things, a succession of things happen in your life.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why I wanted to speak out and talk about why it's so important to slow down, to feel,
to allow yourself to feel.
Just to allow yourself to feel whatever it is, to not belittle experiences because you know better and because you're a professional. And those are some of the lessons that I learned. And honestly, I was embarrassed about that. I was embarrassed to say that I had to learn this lesson because I know better, because I've been there, because I've spoken to parents about these things. But I was always reminded that I'm human, that I'm not super Pam, super mom, or anything like that. And there's a purpose for that to be human, to allow God to use me and to be able to be present for other people. And really and truly, just to be able to feel, it takes a while to unravel all those things. So absolutely, I wanted to talk about these things because we get into, just us in general, everyone gets into routines and things, and we just don't allow ourselves to really just go through
experience.
Absolutely.
To experience.
Absolutely.
The realities of life. Because all of the things that you mentioned are true realities of life, and those things happen. They're going to come. They're going to come. One of the things that you touched on, the mental health aspect of some of the things that we go through. You know, as African Americans, we don't talk enough, I don't believe, about mental health.
Yes.
You know, that's something that's always kept in the back room. It's not discussed and it's not addressed. You know, we have been made to believe that we just have to pull up ourselves up by our bootstraps and keep going.
Yes.
And a lot of us get caught in that cycle of, okay, it happened, it's over, let me move on to the next thing, and we keep going and we keep going and we keep going. And those things have a way of compounding.
Yes.
You know, when we hear about tragedies that happen, mental health related tragedies, we say, but he was fine. You never would have expected that. He was such a nice person. Absolutely. But people are dealing with things that we cannot see on the outside. Absolutely. And they're stuffing them down and trying to go on.
Yes, absolutely. And really, when you see those things, sometimes they're not dealing with it. I certainly was not. And smiling and saying, I'm fine. Even to my husband, who was like, oh, maybe you go to the support group. And I'm like, what would I say? And sometimes comparing maybe the tragic loss of someone else in their family to mine.
And say,
it wasn't as bad, than as that person. So just, I don't need to do that because it wasn't, that bad. Right. So I think that when you see people on the outside, you don't know. You really don't know. And you want to just, I would like to just make sure that we're aware, just like we go to the doctor if we have a cold, just like we go to the doctor if we have a broken arm. Those things are different degrees, but we still go to get the medication that we need. So for me, I needed to go and see someone just to let it out. And for that person to say, Pam, you're human. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do. And to even hear those same words, because I thought it was piercing to have those same words that I would say to someone said to me, and it's not, I'm defeated. It's not, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just that you are human. And you're not this child that you adopted. You're not her therapist, you're her mother. Mm-hmm. And so I had to learn that I can't be the same mom to that child that I was for the birth daughter that I had. And you can learn how to do that, and it's okay. So just to have that experience for that period of time, and to know that if I need to go back, I can. Because you're a professional of any kind, get what you need. To no matter how the degree of what you need is small in your mind or huge, get there, get what you need in order to continue to walk in that purpose of, because I feel like it was my calling to be this child's mom for however long I have her. So and if I do that and respect the God who put me in that position, then I'm going to get the extra help that I need, because it's my responsibility to do that. Not only to be there for her, but also to call in the Calvary if I need it.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, you're calling in the Calvary.
Absolutely.
Because we really do need to be able to lean and depend on each other. And let me ask you, as a mental health therapist, what can I do as a person, just as a friend to someone that I may notice is struggling? Because lots of times we see people having difficulties, you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest?
I can only speak for me, and I can say that what I really wanted was for someone to say, hey, it's okay, it's okay. I see you struggling. Don't deny it, and it's okay. I'm here for you. Let's talk about it. Or let's not talk about it, but I'm still here for you. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that, not because people didn't want to be there for me, but they didn't really know how to approach me, because I knew what I was doing. Right. And for me, my husband really was like, sat down and looked me in my eyes and was like, honey, I know you're struggling. And that just broke me, because nobody else would really say anything. And I put up a good front too. I knew some of the words to say, so you want someone to be able to say, no, something's not right. And it's okay, let's talk about it. So,
as Black women, we're really good at that. Mm-hmm. I'm fine.
Yep.
I'm fine. Pamela, thank you so much for sharing your story with our audience.
Thank you.
I know it'll help someone. We will be back with more from Pamela Raspberry in just a moment.
Still surviving.
We are back with mental health therapist Pamela Raspberry. Pamela, please tell our audience what's next for Pamela Raspberry.
Well, right now I'm putting together a book about adoption. And it's so funny because this book was really written about 12 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it was in the form of a poem, but now we're putting it together and really telling our story as a family. So it's really exciting for all of us to be a part of it, and I'm just excited for this next chapter.
Do you have a title for your book?
Not just yet. Okay. So we're researching, and I've already found someone to do the illustrations, and so we're putting that bones of it together. But
that's wonderful. And it's a family venture.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's telling the story of how you became to adopt, or
it just puts together. It's really a poem that I wrote about promises that you make for the new person coming in your life. And so that kind of tells that story about how our love for you is going to build. So pieces at a time. And I'm excited because I actually wrote that poem for someone else who was adopted 12 years ago. And now it applies really to us, and we'll be really knitting it together with our family.
Oh, that sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah. We can't wait to hear more about that book. So we'll keep our eyes open for it. And we'll look forward to having you back on the show to come and talk to us about your book.
I will come.
Pamela, thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate you sharing your story with our audience.
And I really appreciate just the opportunity to talk and tell others and let them know that they can continue on in their purpose. They can survive and do whatever it is that God calls them to.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll be back with Dr. Deborah Eichelberger in just a moment.
Still surviving.
We're back with Christian psychologist Dr. Deborah Eichelberger. Dr. Deborah, welcome back to our show.
Thank you for having me.
After listening to Pamela Raspberry's story, when we think about mental health counselors or therapists, we think that they have the answers.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And we don't think about caregivers as ever really being in need of care.
Absolutely. I was just mentioning to someone the other day that it's funny because they say that doctors make the worst patients, and it's simply because we have been so learned in the area that we really feel like we should already know this information. So why do we need to go to the services that we need?
That we already know. That was one of the things that she said. I already know this.
Yeah.
But when you listen to her story, she covered a lot of different issues. That role of a caregiver.
Yes.
We know that can be really, really hard and traumatic. And then the loss of a parent. Absolutely. And then going through the loss of a child. So those things in and of themselves are traumatic.
Absolutely.
So what about as a caregiver? How do you get the care that you need? You've been in that role of caring for someone else. How do you then turn around and get the care that you need for yourself?
The first thing that one has to do is recognize that they need care. It's very hard to tell someone who's giving care that they need care. They're not cognizant of that. And one thing that Miss Raspberry brought out was her husband reflecting to her and recognizing, sweetheart, you need help. And not being forceful, but just reiterating it to them and bringing it across in a caring way that you are also in need of care. It's just like if you're taking care of someone and you hurt and break your foot. You're not going to ignore that broken foot. You're going to go to the hospital and get it checked out, get it x-rayed, get it cast. But we don't do that with our mental health or our emotional health. We have to take that just as seriously because a lot of our physical ailments, if we catch colds or catch the flu, we don't realize that sometimes that's stress related because we haven't taken the time to deal with our mental and emotional health.
One of the things that Pamela and I talked about was that stuffing down the emotions and the feelings and continuing to go on and just keep going and not addressing the issues.
Yes.
We've all become really good at putting on a good face and saying that everything is fine, when in a lot of cases things are not fine.
Yes.
And it takes someone outside of ourselves to recognize that we are not doing as well as we perpetrator we are to other people.
Unfortunately, we all have learned some really bad teachings from our ancestors where you were told, don't complain. It's not that bad. Someone has it worse than you. Why are you complaining about something? You're stronger than that. You're better than that. And heaven forbid you are a Christian as well. Well, a Christian shouldn't talk that way. The word. Instead of just realizing that, at the end of the day, I am human. I am not built to handle all of these things at the same time. So give me the space to cry. And I always go back to the Bible that says, if Jesus cried, knowing what he was going to do, but he still shed tears because we still feel. We still have emotions. And one thing that my church leader and my bishop always says is we have to separate our feelings from who we are. So go through the feelings and the emotions and get help. Allow yourself to feel those things because they are indeed true, but it's not true of who you are. You can be that strong mental health therapist, but you also feel depressed and you need to get that checked out and dealt with before it leads to something even worse.
And then lots of times, those mental things will play out in the physical body if they're not addressed.
Absolutely.
You know, all of a sudden you find yourself unable to go forward, that your body has just completely shut down.
Yes. That's one of the reasons why when we're ill, we also get fatigued. It's the body's way of protecting itself so that it can recuperate, fight what's going on the inside so that we can get back to where we need to be. And emotionally, if we're not healthy enough, we are no good to anybody. Because honestly, who wants to deal with someone that is angry and irritated and frustrated all the time? We're not going to be that help that we need for the people in our lives. So we need our help. And one group of people that really hasn't really gotten the help that they need as well are pastors. They are some of the most stressed out people because they are called upon to be counselors. They are called on to be mediators. They're called on to be lawyers. They're called in a lot of different roles, but no one gives them the space to get help as well too. Mental health therapists and mental health counselors also are treated in that regard as well. You already know everything, so you shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't need services, but we all need them because we are human. And we have to have that space to just release and let go of all of those things that we're carrying.
And be human.
And be human. Yes.
Dr. Deborah, are there some resources that we can direct our listeners to that might be able to help someone that's dealing with some emotional issues, or not necessarily recognizing them as emotional issues, but just dealing with some of the realities of life, caring for a loved one, being in that role of a caregiver, in the loss of a child, and trying to adopt a child? Those are parts of life that all of us may have to deal with from one time or another. Are there some resources that we can go to get help, to seek out help when we find ourselves in those places?
One of the best tools that I always recommend to people for them to see that they need help is an actual standardized test, which is a stress test, where it has a list of different statements of things that have taken place. And you go through and you check those things, and it gives you a score at the end of that test. And it will tell you if you are in a particular range, this is your level of stress, or this is your level of emotional distress. And when you can see that number, it sometimes takes seeing it to recognize that you really truly need help. And then from there, you can visit your just regular general doctor or family doctor to give you resources to a therapist within your field. Check your job as well too. There is a program called the Employees Assistance Program, which is EAP, and many jobs carry that, where you can get mental health services for no cost to you for up to 6 sessions. And with those people that are a part of that program, you can get discounts to continue those services. And it can be for you, it can be for your immediate family as well. And you can do family sessions. There's a lot of things that you can do with the EAP program. So checking your general doctor and also checking your employment, because you will have those services available.
So let me ask you the stress test that you spoke about.
Yes.
Where can you find them at? Is that somewhere you can find it online, or do you have to get it?
You can actually, it's as simple as a Google search, but if you go to PsycInfo, I believe it's psycinfo.com or psycinfo.org, they will also have that information there as well.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. Those are wonderful resources.
You're very welcome.
If you or someone you know is having difficulty just dealing with the everyday realities of life, please take advantage of some of the resources that we have offered here. We hope that this show has been helpful to you. Thank you.
Through my life and testimonies, trials and troubles, I will be still surviving. Through my pain and times of sorrow, I will be still surviving. Be it family, stress with enemies, or addiction, I will be still surviving. With God on my side, forever will I remain still surviving.